Chapter 37. Shoyo woke up around midnight. Still in his clothes. He took them off and climbed back into bed in just his underwear and slept for another 4 hours. He woke with a start. Knowing they had to be at the studio at 6. He could hear the shower running. So he decided to go out to the guest house, where he had clothes and toiletries. Kei was telling the truth when he said he'd left everything just as it was in the guest house. The photo of Shoyo and his mother was still on the wall. His go-to flip-flops were still by the door. The book he'd bought to read by the pool was right where he'd left it. On the kitchen counter. It was comforting somehow, knowing the place hadn't been wiped clean of his existence. He tidied up a bit and then got in the shower, letting the hot water run on his back. After his shower, Shoyo threw on a pair of running pants, a t-shirt, and flip-flops. It was just starting to get light outside as he walked the length of the pool. He couldn't help but smile, remembering all the times he'd done this in the past. The fancy coffee maker got a kiss. "Hello, my friend." He made the coffee and filled 2 travel mugs. Then buttered a toasted bagel, wrapping it in a napkin. Kei made his way down the stairs. Shoyo smiled at him. "Good morning." "Good morning." They were running a few minutes late, so Shoyo wasted no time handing Kei his favorite travel mug. They headed for the garage. Shoyo's keys to his Range Rover were hanging on a hook by the door. Right where they always were. He grabbed them. "I'll drive as long as you don't bitch about how fast I'm going." "I won't bitch if you stay in your lane." "Fine, fine." Kei stopped short when Shoyo turned around at the door. "Is something wrong?" Shoyo hesitated. His eyes locked on Kei's lips. "No, we'll kiss later." He tried to turn back around, but Kei caught his arm. "We'll kiss now." It was a sweet kiss. They both tasted like mouthwash. Kei hummed his approval and deepened the kiss as much as he could with hands that were filled with coffee mugs and bags. Shoyo's were full, too, so they fought for dominance for a moment before Shoyo pulled back. If he kept going, coffee mugs would eventually crash to the floor and clothes would be tossed aside and desperate. Hot sex would be had. But none of that was a good idea with an 18-year-old brother in the house. Not to mention a call time of less than an hour. Later, Shoyo said, his chest heaving and his heart so full it wanted to burst wide open. Kei nodded. "Yeah." He licked his lips and sucked in a breath. "God, you turn me on. Always have. From day one," Shoyo said as he pushed the garage door open. He set the travel mug on the roof and opened the car door. But didn't get in. He looked at Kei across the hood of the car and raised an eyebrow. "Fine. From day one. Are you happy now?" Shoyo bit into his bagel and grinned. Ecstatic. Yachi pulled up to Shoyo's car in her little cart. Surprised to see Kei in the passenger seat. "Good morning." "Morning, Yachi." Kei sat next to Yachi in the cart and Shoyo sat in the back. She eyed them both closely and then took off at full speed. "Trent is taking Braxton surfing this afternoon. He thinks your brother is awesome." "Oh, yeah? Aki will love that, I'm sure." Yachi gave Kei a look. Her eyes wide as she motioned with her head at Shoyo. Kei smiled and patted Yachi's leg. They pulled up to Kei's trailer and Shoyo jumped out of the back of the cart. He had to get to hair and makeup as soon as possible. He turned around and walked backward, winking at Kei. "See you later." As soon as he was in the building, Yachi squealed. Kei sat there, grinning from ear to ear. "I think maybe we'll be okay." Yachi grabbed Kei and hugged him. "I can't believe it." Kei patted Yachi's arm. "I'm not going to risk losing him again." "What?" Yachi pulled back. "What does that mean?" Kei hadn't slept much. Not at all, really. He was scared to death that he'd wake up and Shoyo would be gone. Change his mind. Come to his senses. Whatever. About an hour before the alarm went off, he got out of bed and sat in a chair watching Shoyo sleep. He looked so beautiful with his hair splayed all over the pillow. Kei's pillow. He'd fallen in love with Shoyo so slowly. He didn't even realize it was happening. Every day, they'd laugh a little more and argue a little less. Touch a little more, just because they could. His broken arm did that, forced them to be together 24/7. It was a blessing in disguise. On set, they'd found a rhythm, just like they'd done at home. It was magic. How well they worked together. The best of both worlds. How many couples could say that? And then, tragedy struck. A death. A funeral. Inconsolable grief. And that's when Kei knew that his heart, as hard as he'd tried to fight it, belonged to Shoyo. A gift he threw away. That would never happen again. Kei turned to Yachi and looked her in the eye. "I'm going to ask Shoyo to marry me." "What?" Yachi was frozen, gripping the steering wheel as she watched Kei walk away. "Wait." She got out and slowly made her way over to Kay. Hun, are you sure that's the best? I refuse. Kay pursed his lips together as his eyes misted over. I don't care if it seems reckless. Or too soon. Or whatever other reasons you come up with. Yachi, I don't want to live another second of my life without him. Yachi nodded. Okay. She slid her arm through Kay's. We'll pick out the ring together. It needs to be big. I prefer a solitaire. Or maybe emerald cut. Saturday morning came. But not soon enough for Kay. They'd had late nights and early calls all week. By the time they got home, they were both too tired to do anything but spend a few minutes with a kiteru and then fall into bed. The same bed. Kay had bought a new toothbrush and set it next to his own. When Shoyo saw it, he smiled, but he had yet to use it. Always going out to the guest house in the morning to shower and dress. Kay had put in writing what he wanted to see happen with Leo's appeal. After one more season, he hoped they'd be open to a spin-off with Shoyo's character as the lead. Kay would agree to several guest appearances per season if they kept Leo and Colin in a happy, committed relationship. He was ready for something different. Something that would give him more time to spend at home. When the time was right, he'd email his desires to the producers and hope for the best. You hauled me out of bed at the ass crack of dawn to do this? Shoyo bent over, trying to catch his breath. There better be a gourmet breakfast at the top of this damn hill. Kay chuckled. Shoyo looked so cute in his spandex shorts and racerback top. His skin glistening with sweat. Kay literally had to pull him out of bed by both arms. Shoyo hadn't stopped moaning about it since. We're almost there. That's what you said 2 hours ago. You were still in bed 2 hours ago. As it should be. Shoyo motioned with his hand. Give me that water. He took a long sip and gave Kay a stern look. Are you trying to kill me? You know I'm not a mountain guy. No, I'm trying to marry you. Kay could see the little piece of red fabric Yachi had tied on a tree, indicating where he should get off the trail. They were close. He took the water bottle back and slapped Shoyo's butt. Come on, we're almost there. They hiked several hundred more feet and came to an opening that looked out onto the valley. Shoyo stopped, putting his hands on his hips. Well, this is gorgeous. Kay took his hand. It's even better from right up there. They climbed a little high and came to a flat spot where a picnic had been set out on a big blanket. Shoyo gasped. I was kidding about the gourmet breakfast. What the? It was the perfect spot. Completely private. Beautiful view. Kay tried to get his breathing under control. But it was hard. He was out of breath from the hike. But he was also nervous as hell. How did you get all of this up here? Shoyo asked, looking at the champagne bottle sitting in the ice bucket and the pillows strategically placed on the blanket. I had help. Kay handed Shoyo a cold bottle of water from the basket. Are you hungry? Shoyo gulped the water down and wiped the sweat from his brow. What's going on? It's not my birthday. Or, your birthday. No, it's not. Kay kicked at the dirt with his toe. Maybe this was the worst idea he'd ever had in his whole life. On a list of a million bad ideas, this would be number 2. Right behind Tadashi's let's get you a fake boyfriend idea. Shoyo pushed his sunglasses on top of his head. It must be something special for Yachi to haul her ass all the way up here with an ice bucket. Kay laughed. Yeah, she's already texted to let me know she'll be getting a bonus for that one. He kept his eyes on the rock he was working hard to dislodge from the ground. Shoyo stepped closer, putting his finger under Kay's chin and meeting his gaze. I'd love to crash on one of those pillows and drink champagne. But I'd prefer to know what we're celebrating. You're beautiful, Kay whispered, saying the first thing that came to his mind. His voice a little shaky. That's what we're celebrating? Shoyo ran the back of his fingers over Kay's cheek. Because I think we'd be celebrating the wrong face. You didn't let me finish. Kay took a step back and reached for Shoyo's hand. His own hand was shaking. But he held on tightly. I know what it feels like to love you. I also know what it feels like to lose you. I prefer the first one. Because the second one almost killed me. He took a breath, trying to calm his nerves. His words were coming out too fast now. And he needed to slow down. I want to love you forever. My whole life. And I want to do it knowing that you're mine and I'm yours and no one can take that away from us." He reached into the small pocket in his spandex shorts and pulled out a very large diamond solitaire ring. He tried to read Shoyo's expression. Surely, he'd stop him if the answer was going to be a negative one. But Shoyo's expression was only one of disbelief. His mouth was slightly open. And his brow was furrowed. But Kei had no idea what he was thinking. He didn't want to say the words if they would be rejected. It would hurt too much. "Aren't you going to?" Shoyo pointed at the ground. "Oh, right." Kei got down on one knee. He had no choice. He'd have to say the words. Come what may. He reached for Shoyo's hand again and tried to breathe. But his chest felt like it was slowly being crushed. Shoyo squeezed Kei's hand and whispered, "Say it." Kei took that as a positive sign. Also, the fact that Shoyo was still standing there meant something. Right? Instead of saying yes, he wouldn't say that after all they'd been through. They should wait. See how it went. Be a real couple for longer than a day. They'd only had one night together. Unless you counted the last week of falling into bed after work. And now, this? Crazy, right? Insane. Worst idea ever. Except it wasn't. They'd spent almost a year together. They'd seen each other at their best. And they'd seen each other at their worst. Kei struggled to think of a person in his life who'd failed to notice how Shoyo made him a better person. By the time the craft services guy mentioned it, Kei was pretty sure they were all onto something. Maybe it wasn't such a bad idea after all. Kei squeezed his eyes shut and imagined their wedding again. He'd been planning it all week. It wouldn't be small and private. The opposite. Actually, he wanted the big wedding his mother would love to help them plan. He would include everyone important to them. He would invite someone from the press to cover it. Give an interview. Tell the world how happy he was. All of this would of course only happen if it was what Shoyo wanted as well. Shoyo. He was waiting. Kei opened his eyes. Shoyo Hinata. Will you marry me? Kei swallowed hard. His voice and gaze were both steady this time as he waited for an answer. It didn't take long. Shoyo gave him a nod and whispered, "Yes." Kei couldn't get the ring on his finger fast enough. He pressed against Shoyo, cupping his cheeks. "You said yes." He kissed him soundly and laughed. "You said yes." Shoyo wrapped his arms around Kei. "Of course I did." Shoyo kept one arm around Kei's waist. And looked at his ring. "I'm going to be your husband," he said, a disbelieving tone in his voice. "Mr. Tsukihina." Kei twisted the ring, making it sparkle in the sunshine. "Hinata," Shoyo said, smiling. "Hinata Tsukihina." He walked them to the blanket. "I think I'll have my way with my fiancé." Kei tried to wiggle his way loose. "Not out here." "Oh, yes, out here." Shoyo got Kei down on the ground and knelt over him. "Unless you're worried about drones." Kei pulled Shoyo to him, holding his face. "Shut up," he said, right before kissing his fiancée. Tadashi hadn't been surprised by the tweet. A photo of Shoyo with his arms resting on his knees, showing off an engagement ring, along with a message. He said yes. Kei had warned him of his intentions. He didn't try to dissuade him. Even though he'd been somewhat concerned about Shoyo's response. Margaret was very surprised when she'd received the same message in text form. Surprised and overjoyed for her son. Yachi hadn't stopped crying tears of joy ever since. They all sat in the front row, dressed in their finest. Yachi wasn't the only one crying anymore. Did Tadashi always carry a cloth handkerchief in his coat pocket? Or just at weddings? Yachi took his hand and squeezed it, offering support. She reached over and took Margaret's hand in hers as well. It was only when Kei kissed his groom that Yachi let go and cheered louder than anyone else. When the MC announced the first dance, Shoyo stood and held out his hand. "That's our cue." Surprised, Kei took his hand. "But we didn't talk about the first dance." "We didn't?" Shoyo led him out to the dance floor. "I swear we discussed it on the way home from dinner that night. Remember? You talked about having a cheesy song?" But Kei's jaw slacked as the sounds of a piano filled the air. "I never told you what it was." Shoyo pulled him in close. You didn't? Oh, my God. Kei held on tight and they began to sway. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You realize I picked this song when I was 12. Right? Shish. Just dance. They swayed a few more moments with the crowd hooting and hollering. Kei chuckled. TMZ is going to have a field day talking about how cheesy we are. You know that, right? Kei Hinata Tsukihina. Shoyo paused, letting the feel of his husband's new name roll around on his tongue. I don't care what they say. TMZ didn't see your face when you talked about your wedding song. There's no way I'd deny you that. Shoyo pulled back and guided Kei into a spin, quickly pulling him back into the embrace. The song is true. Everything I do. You do it for me? Shoyo raised Kei's hand to his lips and kissed his wedding ring. From day one. Kei's throat tightened. Could I possibly love you any more than I already do? Probably not. Shoyo said with a grin. Besides, we are slow dancing the fuck out of this song. That we are love. That we are. They swayed to the song as the people they loved most watched from inside the room and from above it.